Welcome to the In My Opinion Show with Ronald Barry Robinson and friends. We're the best team on TV. The In My Opinion Show has raised the bar. Watch out, CNN. We're coming to get your ass. Let's talk about President Barack Obama. And we're going to do a report card. But first, I want to welcome my distinguished guests and co-hosts, Mr. Richard Dix Jr.
Welcome and thank you.
and Mr. Henry Hatter.
Welcome, Ron.
Welcome all to the In My Opinion show. The Obama report card. What do you see as the most pressing item of his progressive agenda? Bringing our troops home, health care, lifting restrictions on Cuba, restructuring the automobile industry, creating millions of green jobs, climate change, rebuilding a shattered economy, no more torture of so-called enemy combatants, cap on arms control. Is this Obama agenda doable? Henry, is President Barack Hussein Obama's agenda, is it doable? And what do you see, in your opinion, as the most important item on this agenda?
Thank you, Ron. I really think that Barack Obama has to dwell on the domestic agenda, not the foreign policy, not all of the other things. The economy is hurting, Americans are hurting, and specifically about the domestic economy is health care and preserving jobs within the American industries and reestablishing those jobs with General Motors and Ford and Chrysler and the others who bring wealth to the United States. But first I want to focus upon the health care issue. As you know, Barack Obama has said that Social Security will be broke by 2017, whereas the Republicans had it by 2040. The Republicans, that Barack Obama also says that Medicaid and Medicare will be broke by 2023. That means that it would be taking in less money than it would be paying out. For all essential purposes, Medicaid, Medicare will be broke. There's a big snowball rolling down the hill behind most Americans, and they don't see it yet. They have not yet realized what's ahead of them. That means that we're going to have to sacrifice more. And President Barack Obama has said this. I think the Obama issues that has been advanced are good issues, and they're doable so long as Barack Obama shares or invites 50% of the input from Republicans. Republicans have a good look at the economy. Sure, it's his agenda to run with. He is the deciding factor in this country, and that legislation is more favorable to the Democrats in this case. But I believe that Barack Obama, in his great wisdom, need to listen to Republicans, because Republicans will decide issues that will not allow him to self-destruct.
Mr. Dix, what do you think is the most pressing item on President Barack Obama's agenda?
Thank you, Ron. I want to agree with what Henry coined as the domestic agenda. I believe that Mr. Obama should focus on the domestic agenda because it's more pressing. Now, the question is a bifurcated one, and when I look back at the report card, I would say an A minus. But giving the most pressing agenda, I believe that health care reform is the most pressing one for a number of reasons. One, we understand that there's a $1 trillion price tag on this reform in this area. But what is most important about the reform is that it will save money over time. Now, we're not going to see the immediate savings, but it will save over a period of time. And I believe that with these savings, we can begin to balance the budget because we can't have individuals running into the emergency room and repeatedly getting service, and that becomes their primary care doctor. So certainly we need to make healthcare reform the most pressing one. Secondly, restructuring the financial markets with regulations, because we know that greed has been the common factor that has brought this economy down, especially with Wall Street and these hedge fund managers. And thirdly, the creating millions of green jobs, solar, fuel cell, biofuel. That's critical to bringing in the new economy or ushering in this new economy. Fourth, we have not discussed or heard this president discuss restructuring the credit markets, and I'm talking about Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. When we're talking about consumer protection and consumers stepping up their purchasing power, we have not considered that these different credit reporting agencies are reporting different things, certain things on this credit report, certain things are not on this one, and you have to almost challenge them collectively to, get it straightened out. But I believe we need to take a look at restructuring the credit markets. And the last, certainly not least, is arms control, because we cannot afford to have weapons flowing into Mexico that's fueling this drug war, weapons from the U.S. Flowing into Afghanistan, fighting against our troops. And last, Cuba is on the agenda because we want to increase consumers' opportunity to see other countries like Cuba. So I believe that is necessary, and I'd say an A minus.
Okay. Is there any other items on that agenda that's most important to you, Mr. Hatter?
Yeah, I think that some of the stuff is kind of fluff when you take a look at maybe torture of soldiers and stuff. The incident rate is, we don't see the real truth there. We know it goes on, but we don't see how much of that is exacerbated by the opposing side. So I think that we need to work on that, but that does not be top priority. As we have indicated that healthcare, revitalizing the American marketplace is very, very important for consumers through rebuilding the manufacturing in this country is very, very important. The creation of green jobs. Now, if you put those three things kind of in top tier priorities, I think that Barack Obama can get a embrace around those issues. If you give him too much to work with, he can't do everything at once. And it's going to take some time. He's going to have to break this in little pieces. And he's going to have to, as we've said, that it's going to be health care and creating jobs in this country and stabilizing the economy. That's very, very vital. It's vital to our stability because there's an angry public out there, and we don't always see that.
And one last thing is that we can have the cooperation of the Republicans. I believe bipartisanship is certainly necessary. Bipartisanship is necessary. Let me say that again. Bipartisanship is necessary. However, we when you have one wing of the party that's spending more of their time talking about is the president legitimate, birth certificates and silliness, that's sideshow politics, that really eats up the airways, and it says nothing about the party itself and specifically the individuals who are raising these concerns. I believe the Republicans, some in the House and the Senate, has raised a legitimate concern on co-op in the healthcare, using that as a part of the public option. But when we talk about healthcare reform, that's the most pressing one because it's needed to set the ground for the stability of citizens, the 47 million those who are uncovered, and that may include some people who are not actually U.S. citizens. Unfortunately, they've slipped through the cracks. So we're going to have to cover some folks here, and that's a touchy issue, but we need to get health care to people, especially with individuals losing their jobs and being out of work. This is critical, and so I hope this happens before the August recess, And I wish the president luck on that. And I'm going to attend a healthcare forum, by the way, at the University of Michigan, and I believe that's room 135 here in Flint. That's going to discuss that. So I'm looking forward to being there, and that's this Thursday.
And I want to say I'd like to give the literal grade to Barack Obama as a B minus. And the reason for that is that I don't think that he necessarily has defined all of his priorities yet. And he's been dropping in the polls. And I know you can't please everybody, and he doesn't have to please everybody. He has to have a good focus on what he believes the American people want. And I believe that he is very capable of doing that. He's very capable of articulating those views, and he's doing it in a manner without inflaming either the Republicans or the Democrats or the public in general. And I think he stands up to his adversaries. That's what I like about Barack Obama. He stands up to his critics, because his critics would rather see him do nothing and be idling, so that at the end of 4 years he would have had no legacy and nothing to accomplish. But I think that he's making some movement.
Yes.
Well, quite certainly the president has a lot on his plate. Just into the In My Opinion show, state of Michigan, $100 million ends prisoner sex abuse suit. The state of Michigan has agreed to pay $100 million to settle a class action by more than 500 female prisoners who said they were sexually assaulted by prison guards. The deal reached in Washtenaw County Circuit Court ends a legal battle that has raged since 1996. As part of the settlement, the state has agreed to drop its appeal of two earlier verdicts for 18 of the women, totaling nearly $24 million. Those women will be paid from this settlement. The Free Press chronicled the alleged abuse in January in a series that focused on Tony Button, who was awarded $3.45 million in damages. This is a good deal for the state, said Deborah LaBelle, the woman's lawyer. If we tried all of these, the cost would have been over $1 billion. The payments will be made over 5 years. In February 2008, 10 prisoners, including Button, were awarded $15.5 million for abuse by guards at Scott Correctional Facility in Wayne County. In November, a second jury awarded 8 women $8.4 million for abuse at Crane Correctional Facility in Coldwater. After interest and attorney fees were estimated, the two verdicts could have cost Michigan taxpayers more than $50 million. The state agreed to 6 payments over 5 years. The first is due October 15th. I'm proud of the state recognizing the harm and making a strong statement, said Deborah LaBelle, an Ann Arbor civil rights lawyer who led a team that sued on behalf of the women. This will resolve everything. It's about time these women receive justice in some form. As a retired state employee working with the Department of Corrections, there was a lot of this sexual misconduct and abuse going on, and I witnessed it personally, and I helped fire several employees for such behavior. Let's talk about domestic violence has reached epidemic proportions in the United States. How do we address this problem as a civilized society? Richard, what's the best way to go about stopping domestic violence, if that's a possibility?
Well, it's a difficult task, and it's a challenge. What a feat to say we could stop it. If we could, it would be stopped. But let me say this. If you are currently a victim of domestic violence, I encourage you to call 911 right now. If you have experienced it and you continue to have some fits where you cannot escape, use your local facility, such as you can dial the YMCA or YWCA at 810-235-SAFE. But to answer the question, domestic violence has grown in an epidemic proportion. And this is a call not only for counseling, but law enforcement intervention. And I don't know how many more laws that we can come up with to legislate behavior. This is really a disaster. But what has gone unreported is the homosexual and lesbian domestic violence. This is largely under the radar for those who have mates and partners that have been abused, and they are afraid to call the police for fear of being exposed or perhaps fear of not receiving any assistance. So there are similar cases to live-in partners who have suffered under this banner. And this is a matter where there's been, gay and lesbian assaults, not from the public, but from their partners. And that needs to be addressed, and we can begin to reduce it that way. We can address the matter by openly confronting the batterer. Once we identify the batterer, we can begin to confront that person. And that comes with legal means of an arrest. Following the arrest, there need to be a subsequent judgment and sentence where this individual will serve part of their time, because there's two types of batteries. There's you have a misdemeanor assault domestic, and you have felonious assault domestic. One is with a weapon, one is using just simply fisticuffs or threats. But here's the point that I believe would drastically reduce some of these domestic issues, and that is taking the batterer and placing them in the community on I-75 or north end of Flint or south end, east, west, and having them perform services, cleaning up abandoned houses, knocking down weeds, and perhaps there need to be a chain gang. I believe with that, individuals begin to not only become embarrassed by being out there, they'll become more aware that after working 100 hours or 1,400 hours, as Chris, the singer, Chris Brown, who made a public apology today, who, for those who don't know, who beat the other singer, Rihanna. And that's important, that you publicly apologize. If we take every case and sensationalize it as this one was, I believe we can begin to make some headway. But many of these cases go undetected, whether they're gay and lesbian disputes or perhaps just another man and woman dispute having a domestic. It's widespread. It's risen to an epidemic proportion, and we need to do something about it. So I believe that there's a couple of steps. One is counseling, one is help, where we can get the victim some help, and certainly placing the offender in the community to do some type of work, labor. I believe that would begin to send a strong message, because through embarrassment and incarceration, I believe that there'll be some changes.
Putting a face on domestic violence. Domestic violence is that invisible boundary between love and hate. It crosses all racial and economic barriers. Although men can be victims, most often the victims are women and children. If he hits you one time, he will hit you again, and they're always going to say, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it. It's not going to happen again." Abusers will say whatever it takes to bait you back in. One important lesson to remember: take threats seriously. Remember, if you want out of a domestic violence relationship, have a safety and exit plan. Come up with a way to leave, and most importantly, do not tell your abuser face to face you're leaving. In America, domestic violence has reached epidemic proportions, with hundreds of thousands of cases reported. In fact, 1 in 4 women are victims. Report and get help immediately if you and your family are experiencing domestic violence. The National Domestic Hotline is 1-800-799-7233, or contact your local law enforcement agency, mental health facility, YMCA. Henry, what is your thoughts on combating domestic violence?
I really enjoyed the diatribe by Mr. Dix. It was really good. Of course, that's his business. He's engaged in this all the time. But I would say I think we're dreaming if we think that we're going to correct this behavior by people. It's one of those character flaws that we all wear. And you two men I look at as really probably good to your spouses.
Absolutely.
I don't think that anybody would sit here in a public forum and say, but report an abuser, except men who would have love and respect for their spouses
Or girlfriends.
or girlfriends or the kids
Well,
or whatever,
Well, I love my mother,
and your mothers.
and that ought to size it up.
What a great what a great statement. But as you look at other comparisons of violence and character of flaws and sordid behaviors among human beings, this discussion is somewhat tantamount to looking at the Pope or the priest who have the public trust and trusted with your spouses and your inner thoughts and your fortunes and stuff like that, and yet they have not been able to catapult over the bar, so that they are free of these kind of behaviors. And I believe that human beings live in eternal conflict, and legislating conflict, like you said earlier, Mr. Dix, is not the easiest way to do it. There's got to be behavioral changes. And I don't know whether it would be good if people who had these character flaws and needs anger management would be taught by people who are absent of those same behaviors. But where do you find those people?
Mm-hmm.
They're non-existent. So to say that we can go out and solve this problem is probably not as easy as we think it is. We're going to have to find another means. There was a time when we were guided by principles in the Bible. It was a kind of an aloof thing. You didn't see God, and you weren't in communication with God, but you feared Him because of the teaching. And that kind of controlled our behavior among the population for many, many years. We don't have that now, and we live in a free-for-all society. So we're almost without values and standards. It's whatever goes. It's yours to do unless you get caught and handled by the authorities. And that being handled by the authorities has not made appreciable difference in the behavior.
Exactly.
We got to look
exactly.
someplace else for those kind of solutions.
Humanity deserves compassion. The wooden bowl. I guarantee you will remember the tale of the wooden bowl tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. A frail old man went to live with his son, daughter-in-law, and 4-year-old grandson. The old man's hands trembled, his eyesight was blurred, and his step faltered. The family ate together at the table, but the elderly grandfather's shaky hands and failing sight made eating difficult. Peas rolled off his spoon onto the floor. When he grasped the glass, milk spilled on the tablecloth. The son and daughter-in-laws became irritated with the mess. "We must do something about father," said the son. "I've had enough of his spilled milk, noisy eating, and food on the floor." So the husband and wife set a small table in the corner. There, grandfather ate alone while the rest of the family enjoyed dinner. Since grandfather had broken a dish or two, his food was served in a wooden bowl. When the family glanced in grandfather's direction, sometimes he had a tear in his eye and he sat alone. Still, the only words that the couple had for him were sharp admonitions when he dropped a fork or spilled food. The 4-year-old watched it all in silence. One evening before supper, the father noticed his son playing with wood scraps on the floor. He asked the child sweetly, "What are you making?" Just as sweetly, the boy responded, "Oh, I'm making a little bowl for you and Mama to eat your food when I grow up." The 4-year-old smiled and went back to work. The words struck the parents so that they were speechless. Then tears started to stream down their cheeks. Though no word was spoken, both knew what must be done. That evening, the husband took grandfather's hand and gently led him back to the family table. For the remainder of his days, he ate every meal with the family, and for some reason, neither husband nor wife seemed to care any longer when a fork was dropped, milk spilled, or the tablecloth soiled. On a positive note, I've learned that no matter what happens, how bad it seems today, life goes on, and it will be better tomorrow. I've learned that you can tell a lot about a person by the way he or she handles four things: a rainy day, the elderly, lost luggage, and tangled Christmas tree lights. I've learned that making a living is not the same thing as making a life. I've learned that life sometimes gives you a second chance. I've learned that you shouldn't go through life with a catcher's mitt on both hands. You need to be able to throw something back sometimes. I've learned that if you pursue happiness, it will elude you. But if you focus on your family, your friends, the needs of others, your work and doing the very best you can, happiness will find you. I've learned that whenever I decide something with an open heart, I usually make the right decision. I've learned that even when I have pains, I don't have to be one. I've learned that every day you should reach out and touch someone. People love that human touch, holding hands, a warm hug, or just a friendly pat on the back. I've learned that I still have a lot to learn. I've also learned that you should pass this on to everyone you care about. This is Ronald Barry Robinson and friends saying, for the In My Opinion show, stay focused.